So this is now our third week going through the text of Imam al-Bukhari, Adab al-Mufrad. Adab al-Mufrad is known as the second most important of all of Imam al-Bukhari's works. The most important, of course, is the Sahih al-Bukhari. And this is a specific text that deals with Adab. And Adab is known as mannerisms or behaviorisms or akhlaq, husn al-khuluq. And we spent our first week by looking at the importance of Imam al-Bukhari's selection of his choice of authoring this text of hadith, specifically on adab, bearing in mind, of course, that half of the hadith in this book are already in his Sahih al-Bukhari, and also Imam Bukhari has a section in his Sahih al-Bukhari on Kitab al-Adab anyway, a chapter of Adab. So why therefore make a specific book, this book, full of 1,300 and more hadith, specifically on the topic of Adab, of mannerism. We spoke about the many different narrations of our Prophet ﷺ emphasizing goodness of character. In fact, Sahaba once they said, Ya Rasulullah, tell us an akthar ma yadkhul an-nas al-Jannah. What is the main thing that will lead people to enter into Jannah? And he said two things. He said, taqwa Allah wa husn al-khuluq, having fear of Allah and having an excellent character. And so that's like half of everything, therefore, because you're a social being, you're interacting with your fellow Muslimin in the masjid, with your parents, with your elders, with your youngsters, with your neighbors, with your spouses. And it was therefore imperative that Islam, of course, provides a solution of behaviorism. What is the best way to deal with people in the world in which you live? And our Prophet also said, ﷺ, that ما من شيء, that there is nothing that is أثقل في ميزان المؤمن يوم القيامة من خلق حسن. There is nothing that is heavier on the scale of the believer on the day of Qiyamah than having a good and excellent character. Therefore, that became a standard of a person's excellence and behaviorism. We spoke about the way that many of the great ulama would emphasize this even more than hadith. Like Imam Malik's mother would say to him, Ya bunay, idhab ila Rabi'a fata'allam min adabihi qabla ilmihi. My son, go to learn from Rabi', one of Imam Malik's teachers, and learn from his manners before you learn from his knowledge. They would say, Eat al-fuqaha wal-ulama fata'allam min adabihim qabla ilmih. Go to the scholars and fuqaha and learn from their manners before you learn from their knowledge. فَإِنَّ ذَاكَ أَحَبَّ إِلَيْ لَكَ مِنْ كَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْحَدِيثِ. Because that's more beloved to me than that you come home with much hadith, right? Because what if you have much hadith but you have an ugly character? So therefore it was absolutely essential that the Muslim focuses very essentially on correcting himself and ensuring that his behaviorism, his mannerisms are to a very high standard. And ulama would author many books like this hadith book, many books like this, but specific topics like adab of eating and adab of talking and adab of engagements and adab of congregations and adab of marriages and adabs of all sorts of things, because it was deemed essential that Muslims are at the peak of good character. And Allah in Quran also says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah speaking about the Prophet ﷺ and saying, you are on the most exalted of all characters. And so therefore, as representatives of his ummah, as Muslims, it is essential that we think deeply about this topic. And so we began therefore speaking about Imam al-Bukhari and his life, and what happened in his life. For those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the first few weeks, Imam al-Bukhari had an interesting life, and he always had a passion for hadith. As a young child, His mother died when he was small. His father was also a great scholar of hadith, and he had studied with many of the Tabi'een. And so Imam al-Bukhari spent a lot of his time in Bukhara, where he was born in Uzbekistan, and then he traveled to Baghdad a few times, to Hijaz several times, and he learned from many of the great ulama of hadith. And in that he became very renowned as a person who had a great memory. He could memorize not just hadith, but also the biographies of the narrators of the hadith. Ilm al-Rijal, and he would author books also on Ilm al-Rijal as well, recounting the biographies of these great hadith, people who emerge in the hadith chains of narration, who's weak and who's strong, and who should be rejected, who should be accepted. And this was, of course, a science in itself. And so Imam al-Bukhari, in beginning his Kitab al-Adab, his first section that we went through 2 weeks ago and also last week, was on this verse in the Quran, where Allah says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا. Now there are 3 verses like this in the Quran, where Allah begins by saying, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ, we have enjoined upon man. In this verse it's husna, another verse is ihsana, and another verse, there's nothing after it. But the assumption is therefore it would be Allah speaking about excellence. We have enjoined upon man excellence to his parents. In this verse, he begins with this bab, qawlu ta'ala. This is the name of the chapter of his introduction, right in the beginning of his Adab al-Mufrad. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ لِتُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِعِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. Alright? إِلَيْهِ مَرْجِعُكُمْ وَنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah is saying that we have enjoined upon man excellence to his parents, and وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ, and if they make effort with you to make you make shirk with me, then don't obey them in this. You're all going to return to me, and I will inform you what you used to do. So Allah is saying therefore, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ, we enjoined upon man excellence to his parents. That's the standard of behavior. But if they compel you, force you, if they incite you to make shirk with me, don't obey them. But this does not negate the first part of the instruction in the verse in the Quran, that we've enjoined upon man excellence to his parents. And why this was important, we spoke about the context of this revelation in light of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, the great companion, whose mother threatened him, and she said, if you don't go back to your religion, I'm not going to eat food and drink for 3 days. And she was threatening to die, saying because if she wouldn't accept him becoming Muslim. And Sa'd remained by her bedside and kept encouraging her, have some food, have some drink, But she refused, and then at the end, Sa'd said this very famous line, and he says, if you had like 100 souls or 1,000 souls, and each soul was to leave you one by one with the same amount of pain and difficulty, I still wouldn't leave my religion for anything. And then his mother realized, and there's no hope left. So then she had some water and so forth. But this verse was revealed concerning him. Right, that you remain strong in your religion, don't obey them in the shirk, but still uphold the mannerism of excellence towards your parents. And then we went through different hadith, narrations, hadith number 1. And these were really focused on the first one was, what the man said, Ya Rasulullah, which actions is the most beloved? What's the most beloved action? أَيُّ الْعَمَلِ أَحَبُّ إِلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Which actions is the most beloved action to Allah? And the first one the Prophet said was الصَّلَاةُ عَلَى وَقْتِهَا, praying salah on its time, in this narration. There's another narration with a slight alteration. In this narration it's salah on its time. And then the second one, بِرُّ الْوَالِدَيْنِ, excellence towards your parents, piety towards your parents. And then the third one, al-jihad fi sabilillah. This was the first one that Imam Bukhari began with. And then the second one was a hadith mawquf. Hadith mawquf is like an athar. And so different types of hadith marfu', this is coming from the Prophet ﷺ. Hadith mawquf is a hadith that has it stops, mawquf, waqaf, it stops at the Prophet's companion and doesn't go to the Prophet himself. But this is still extremely important because it's stopping at the Prophet's companion. And so of course they're learning their religion from the Prophet himself. And so it's called an athar, hadith mawquf. It has immense value and weight as an evidence or a corroborating evidence. And this one was a hadith about Abdullah ibn Umar that that the pleasure of your Lord is in the pleasure of your parent, and the anger of your Lord is in the anger of your parent. And then thereafter, there was 1, 2, 3 similar narrations about the one that we might be familiar with. And that is when the man said, Ya Rasulullah, who is most deserving? One narration, in fact, it's not here so far, it says, Man ahaqqa nas bi husni sahabati, who is most deserving of my excellent companionship? One hadith narration says in this book, Man abara, who should I be most pious towards, meaning in the dunya? And the Prophet says, Ummak, your mother. And then the man says, Thumma ay, then who? Then he says, Ummak, your mother. And he says, Thumma ay, then he says, Ummak, your mother. Then who? Thumma abak, then your father. It's one that we know about. I was giving a talk in Islamite school. I was invited to give like a lecture for the year 11 students doing their religious studies exam. Now, it's coming up in the next few weeks. And so the topic was on Islam and relationships or family, something like that. And so I mentioned this hadith, and it was beautiful because the Muslim children, they all knew this hadith, So I said, in Islam we have this hadith, and it says, the Prophet said, your mother, and then when he said, then who? Then all the audience, they said, your mother, the second time. And I said, and then who? They said, your mother. So they all knew. I think people know this hadith because it goes around, and so it's a beautiful thing that people understand this hadith in light of the importance of the mother. And then we went through another hadith mawquf, and this is from Abdullah ibn Abbas, when the man came and he said, and this man killed somebody. And the assumption was from the hadith that this could be before Jahiliyyah, before Islam, time of Jahiliyyah. He killed somebody, then he wants an answer, what do I do? He says, he was a big girl because someone else married her. He felt, and these stories exist even in our world today. And so Ibn Abbas says to him, Ummuka hayy, is your mother alive? And he said, no. And then he says, just go away and seek Allah's forgiveness. And then his companion said, I went to Ibn Abbas and I said to him, why did you even ask him about his mother alive? And then Ibn Abbas says, إِنِّي لَا أَعْلَمُ عَمَلًا أَقْرَبُ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ مِنْ بِرِّ الْوَالِدَةِ. I don't know of an action that is more beloved to Allah than goodness to one's mother. Right? So he's saying if there was a chance for this man to be forgiven, perhaps it would be in this area of finding forgiveness, even though he's killed somebody. This does not, of course, negate what we have in Islam, of retribution, of qisas, and punishment for a murderer. It could be this was before Islam, or it could be that this person came from the wilderness. Allah knows best, really. And then, more narrations. And then we have what we did last week, about birrul ab, the chapter of goodness to one's father. And so Imam Bukhari, therefore, uses the same hadith, about the one that your mother, and then your father. So the fact that the father is still included emphasizes the importance of the father. And then even the hadith number 6 is the same thing, bir abak, the excellence towards your father. Now we're on hadith number 7 today. It should be, what hadith is that? Saying at the top? 8, yeah. So I think this is just a small 2 lines. I think that page wasn't printed. I forgot to send it to him. I'll just read it to you. So this is bad birr walidayhi wa in zalim. So this is the chapter of excellence towards one's parents, even if they are unjust. We're going to discuss this today, so what it means. Ibn Abbas says, radiallahu anhu, any Muslim whose father and mother are Muslims, ما من مسلم له والدان مسلمان يصبح إليهما محتسبا إِلَّا فَتَحَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بَابَيْنِ. So any Muslim who wakes up every morning with the intention of doing right by his two parents will have two doors open for him or her in paradise. إِلَّا فَتَحَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بَابَيْنِ يعني من الجنة. وَإِنْ كَانَ وَاحِدًا فَوَاحِدًا. So he says, anybody who has this intention of waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to do good by my parents, Allah opens for him two doors of heaven if he has two parents still alive. But if he has one parent alive, then one door of heaven opens for him. And then وَإِنْ أَغْضَبَ أَحَدَهُمَا لَمْ يَرْضَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ حَتَّى يَرْضَ عَنْهُ. And if he angers one of them, if he angers a parent, Allah will not be pleased with that person until his or her parent is pleased with that person. It's like the hadith mawquf we did, the second or third hadith Imam al-Bukhari mentions about رضا الرب في رضا الوالد وسخط الرب في سخط الوالد, that the happiness of your Lord is in the happiness of the parent, and anger of the Lord is an anger of the parent. This hadith is just emphasizing that very same point. And then the Prophet was asked, this person was asked, قِيل وَإِنْ ظَلَمَ, what if they do an injustice upon him? قَالْ وَإِنْ ظَلَمَ, even if they are unjust, one must act to please one's parents. Okay. Now, Shaykh Adab Salahi in his commentary of Adab al-Mufrad, he speaks about this narration and all other narrations, and he says, for example, what does it mean that your parents could do dhulm on you and you would have to obey them still? And he says there is a distinction to be made between a person and a parent who does dhulm, injustice on you, where it does not consist of a sin. That they are not instructing you to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in what they're telling you to do, it's clearly unjust, meaning it's above board. It could be oppressive even, above board. And he says that where the stop mark is could be where their oppression affects somebody else other than you. Right? Where the dhulm affects somebody else other than you as a son who's supposed to obey them, or as a daughter who's supposed to obey them. The third thing to remember, of course, that dhulm itself is a thing that is impermissible. Dhulm, injustice. Right? The Prophet said in the hadith Qudsi, Allah says, very beautiful hadith Qudsi, the Prophet said, Allah said, Ya ibadi, inni harramtu dhulma ala nafsi, wa ja'altu bainakum muharraman fala tadhalamu. My servants, I have forbidden dhulm on myself, and I have forbidden the same amongst you, so do not be unjust, make dhulm amongst yourselves. Right? The Prophet also said, ittaqu dhulm, فَإِنَّ الظُّلْمَ ظُلُمَاتِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Beware of dhulm, beware of injustice, because injustice is darknesses on the day of judgment. Right? So there's a few things therefore that come through in this hadith, like Shaykh Adab Salahi was saying. One is therefore that even if your parents are going above board and you recognize that that's something that's unjust, you still are duty bound to obey them in this. But if there is a sin involved, something that Allah would be displeased with, not you finding it hard for yourself, but Allah is angered with, then there's no obedience. Why? Because of the hadith and the principle قَائِلَ لَا طَاعَةٌ لِمَخْلُوقٍ فِي مَعْصِيَةِ الْخَالِقِ. There is no obedience in the creation, in the disobedience to the Creator. That applies for everybody. Applies for your parents, applies for your head teacher, anybody. No obeying creation if creation is instructing you to disobey the one that created you in the first place. And then number three should not be that the dhulm, the injustice you feel upon yourself should not extend to somebody else. Right? That's the other thing for us to remember also. And then we have hadith number 8, speaking gently with one's parents. Bab lin al-kalam liwalidayhi, lin al-kalam. There's a beautiful poet who said to his son, Ya bunay, inna al-birr shay'un hayyin, wajhun taliqun wa kalamun layyin. He said, oh my son, piety is something very easy. It is a cheerful face and a nice words, you know. And again, these kind of narrations or sometimes emphasize upon the importance of just excellent character. Ibn al-Qayyim said that الدين كله خلق فمن زاد عليك في الخلق زاد عليك في الدين. The whole religion is excellent character, and whoever has outdone you, has been better than you in good character, has outdone you in the religion. Whoever has a better character than you, it's likely he would have a better deen than you. Because what he's saying is that there are too many different variables that stem from excellent character. Sabr is one of them. Iffa, you know, modesty, courage, patience, determination. All of these come as strands of a person's excellent character, excellent talking. So if you think therefore about Imam Bukhari's heading therefore of his section, Bab Din al-Kalam walidayhi, speaking gently with one's parents, this of course is something specific, but the broader construct is just having excellent speech. Allah in the Quran says, قُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ. Allah says, tell my servants to speak beautifully, speak excellent words. Indeed, shaitan seeks to sow corruption between them. And you'll notice it's very easy, if you look at relationships, it's very easy for something to break down, you know, for there to be a problem because of bad words spoken. Or you're saying you mean something good, but you're just saying it in a wrong way. You know, so therefore Allah is telling us, be mindful of what you say and how you say it. Have a mannerism and adab in the way that you're exchanging, you know, communication between one another. In this one, therefore, we have this interesting narration. It says, can you see in Hadith of 8, yeah? Taysala ibn Mayyan said, when I was with the companion of Hamar ibn Najda, the Khariji. Who were the Khariji? Khawarij. Khawarij were and still are a very extreme fringe of the Muslim body. And these were people who emerged in the Prophet's time, as really rebels. There were people who had gross deficiencies in their religion, they were in the understanding of their religion. Even though outwardly they were very, very pious looking people. You know, in fact the Prophet says if you look at them, if you compare your salah to their salah, you think your salah is nothing. If you compare your salah, your fasting to their fasting salah, you think yours is nothing. And you think they're so pious because they're doing such amazing ibadah. But the Prophet said Islam would leave them like an arrow leaves its prey. Islam would leave them like an arrow leaves its prey. And they would recite Quran, but it wouldn't go past their throats. That means outwardly you think, what amazing people on the Sunnah. They look like they're following the Sunnah and everything, but they're so far, far, far away from Islam. And there were people who were, you know, a man once came and he said, the Prophet was giving spoils of war to Sahaba, and the man said, he said, Ya Muhammad i'dil. Ya Muhammad i'dil. So we don't say that, we say, the Sahaba will say, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Nabi Allah, you know. He said, oh Muhammad, be just, i'dil. Be just in your giving your spoils of war. The Prophet said, if I'm not going to be just, then who's going to be just? If I'm not going to be just, who's going to be just? You know? And Sahaba, they wanted to attack this man. They said, give us permission, Ya Rasulullah. He said, no. He said, because from the loins of these people will come a people. You know, from the progeny of this man will come a people. You know, and they will emerge in every generation until the coming of the Dajjal. So there are always going to exist fringe groups that are very, very extreme and have a lack of any tolerance and have no mercy, you know. And when Ibn Abbas went to debate with them, the first thing Ibn Abbas asked them, because these were the people that made takfir, they called Ali ibn Abi Talib a disbeliever, you know, they called, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, disbeliever, Allah be pleased with both of them, takfir on Sahaba. And Ibn Abbas went to see them. And when Ibn Abbas said, when I went to see them, look at this. I went to see them, right? And they had their tents. Now these are people who are saying the Sahaba are disbelievers. And they're showing disrespect for the Salaf. He said, when I went to see them, I could hear humming of Quran. Humming of Quran. That means all night they recited Quran, recited Quran. I mean, they think they have something, you know. And Ibn Abbas says, I went to them and I said, okay, so who are your scholars? Like, who do you have? And they didn't have anyone. They didn't have any. This is one of the signs of the Khawarij groups, that they don't have any scholars with them. And the Prophet described them as being Sufaha al-Ahlam, Hudatha al-Islam. Hudatha is meaning very young in age, very young people, young, wild, rash. You know, small teeth, Islam, you know, like very young teeth, meaning young in age people. And Sufaha al-Ahlam, and they have very wild dreams. Wild dreams, very young in age, but they don't have the mercy, you know, and they kill. And they kill. And the Prophet says that they will have this love, you know, for spilling blood. And so he went to one of these people, he went to the Khawarij. When I was with the companion of Amr ibn Najr, the Khawarij, I did certain things that I consider and only consider as major sins. Now, one of the things the Khawarij did is that they make takfir on major sins. This is the first thing that they did. So they say you're a disbeliever if you commit a major sin or a sin. This is why they said that Ali ibn Abi Talib and others became disbelievers, because they hadn't judged by what Allah had revealed, you know, because they were seeking mediation, you know, in the fitna that emerged between them afterwards. They said that they were not looking for Allah, they were looking for people's mediation. It's a complete gross lack of intelligence, gross lack of understanding of the religion. And so they used to make takfir on sins, right? So this is one of the ways that they were recognized. And so he said, so I said to him what I had done, and he said that those were not major sins. Rather, he said, the major sins, which are 9 in number, are as follows. This is hadith mawquf again from Abdullah ibn Umar, son of al-Khattab radiallahu anhuma. He said, number 1, al-ishrak billah. So to make shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And then number 2, murdering a soul, taking an innocent life. Number 3, firar, you know, running from the battlefield. Number 4, accusing an innocent woman falsely, accusing her of, you know, sexual misconduct, you know, adultery and things. Number 5, taking usury interest. Number 6, spending the wealth of orphans. Allah mentioned this specifically in the Quran, you know, not to devour the property of orphans unless you're going to improve the property of the orphans, or the wealth of the orphans, but not to spend of it. Talking heresy in the masjid, making light of religion. And then we have the main one for us right now is وَبُكَاءَ الْوَالِدَيْنِ مِنَ الْعُقُوقِ, and to make your parents cry over you because of your disobedience. Ibn Umar is saying that's a major sin. To make your mother or father cry tears over you because you're being disobedient to them. Right? And then he says, then Ibn Umar said to me, this is beautiful, because Ibn Umar then says to him, this is also the hope in Islam, how we have to generate hope in our discourse with people. قال ابن عمر أتفرق من النار. You know, do you want to be saved from the fire? You know, do you fear fire? وَتُحِبُّ أَن تَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةِ, and you love to enter heaven. قُلْتُ أَيْ وَاللَّهِ. He said, yes, I did. قال أَحِيَّ وَالِدِكَ. You know, is your mother alive? Are your parents alive? قُلْتُ عِنْدِي أُمِّي. He said, I have my mother alive, my father has passed away. قال فَوَاللَّهِ
لو ألنت لها الكلام وأطعمتها الطعام لتدخلن الجنة ما مجنبت الكبائر. He says, I impressed Allah. He said, by Allah, if you speak with her gently, لو ألنت لها الكلام. It's like the chapter of his section of the title of his chapter, Bab Lin al-Kalam li-walidayn. You know, if you use soft words with your mother, and you give her food to eat, you feed your mother, you will surely enter Jannah if you avoid these major sins. And the major sins he's speaking about are the ones, the 9 he's just spoken about in his section over here. And it's beautiful because what this does is it shows us a contrast. Shaykh al-Islam makes this point, the contrast between the major sin he's speaking about, which was what? To make your parents cry over you for disobedience, and then the way you get to heaven, the good thing you do is that you speak kind words to your mother, and kind words to your father, soft words to your parents, nice words to your parents. It means, of course, never to be rude, never to be arrogant, never to be, like we mentioned, I think last week, the verse in the Quran where Allah says, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. Allah says, and don't even say, Allah says, if one or both reach old age, where you could become irritated by them, لَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Don't even say uff to them. I mean, Allah uses the word, not to say the sound. Don't even say uff, like you get frustrated with them. And don't, scold them. Scold them. Don't kind of make them feel, low. But Allah says, and say unto them generous words, beautiful words. And this is, of course, in line with many verses in the Quran which emphasize this point about excellent communication with one's parent. We'll mention one last hadith before we conclude, inshallah. It's hadith number 9. This is the same section on Bab al-Kalam, speak excellent words. And this you'll find the verse, you'll see a verse that you know already. Sufyan and Hisham ibn Urwa and Abihi. Okay, so Hisham ibn Urwa with his father. And this is his commentary on the verse in the Quran. وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ, where Allah says, and spread over them the wings of humility and mercy, meaning your parents. What does this mean? وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Look at the imagery Allah is using, wings of mercy. Allah is saying, spread over them the wings of mercy. Allahu Akbar. And also, dhul, which is humbleness, meaning spread over them the wings of humility, go down, humbleness and mercy. Never to raise your head or to raise your voice, and mercy over your parents. And he said that this means لا تمتنع من شيء حبه, that it means do not refuse them anything that they like. This is understanding. Do not refuse them anything that they like. Okay, so this is another thing that we have to bear in mind. We will end here, inshallah, because this is the end of his bab. The next bab is bab Jaza al-Walidayn, the reward for parents. Okay, so I hope, inshallah, first look at this first examination of the 9 hadith. I've provided some insights from these hadith and these narrations from Sahaba, the importance of showing excellence to one's parents, kindness to one's parents, speaking good to one's parents, finding forgiveness with Allah in showing goodness to one's parents, finding the anger of Allah in disobedience to one's parents and making them angry. And I think this is extremely important because this is the first thing that Imam Bukhari begins his entire book, Adab al-Mufrad, with. So if we're going to have husn al-khuluq, excellent manners with people, it can't be that we have the best manners with our friends and our wives and husbands, but we have the worst mannerisms with our parents. That's like a curse. That's very, 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 very wrong. And the ones we should emphasize most would be that we would have the best of mannerism, with one's parents. May Allah grant all of us tawfiq. Any questions before we wrap it up?
give him such a high status.
Yeah.
Do we have more rights than a wife? I mean, because it's quite a delicate subject, you know. I mean, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like, because someone said to me once, he said, you see, because in-laws become outlaws. In-laws become outlaws. I think people generally have this situation. The best advice, I mean, the ulama gave, I think, is just the fact that you have to try your best to please both. You see, this is a good question in light of the hadith al-Bukhari mentioned, because it's about وَإِنْ ظَلَمَا, even if they do wrong to you. Now Allah in the Quran says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Allah says, be قَوَامِين, be upright for justice as witnesses to Allah, even if it's against yourselves or against your parents. Yeah. This is a very beautiful hadith. If you think about where you are in a marriage, because you have a wife and you have a mother, okay, and this can be, a situation something's going to happen sometime, and Allah is saying, be just. So your responsibility is to live by the principle of adab. Allah says, "Aqsitu," be just with equity. Allah loves the muqsitin. Allah loves the ones who are just. So it's about having wisdom and trying to ensure that both parties are pleased, But if the rights of one are infringed upon, then that has to be made clear. But it doesn't mean that you do it in a way that you're going to aggravate tensions between yourself and your parent, for example. I'm just saying, let's assume the wife did something right, and let's say the mother is in the wrong, okay? And you're kind of the third party here, and you're kind of thinking, what am I supposed to do, It's about, this is why he's emphasizing, if we adopt this practice of just saying what we want to say, but in the nicest way possible, you can see how we can just soften hearts, But if I go with all guns blazing and say, how dare you, that's just going to aggravate everything. You can ruin the relationship. It's a matter of, therefore, being true to the principle of justice, what's just by Allah and His Prophet. And that's another thing. What about the scale? It's like we have one of the mafatih of zawaj, of marriage. One of the ulama wrote this beautiful thing about 5 keys to a marriage. And he said that miftahu sa'ada zawjiyya taqwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The key to a blissful marriage is having taqwa of Allah. First thing, why? Because if you don't have fear of Allah, it means you have no criterion. Let's say you have a problem with your wife, and she thinks she's right, you think you're right, and you're both acting on ego because you're both going to prove that you're right. Unless we both say, hold on, what does Allah and His Prophet tell us to do, or tell us not to do? If we have no framework that we're going back to what is divinely true, then there's no way of quelling that problem. Because it's a battle of egos, nafs and my nafs and your nafs. And well, if you swear, I'll say a bigger swear word, and you say this, I'll say something worse against your family, and it's endless like that. Until we stop and say, what does Allah and His Prophet want us to do in this situation? And the same is true, therefore, in any difficulty you might have with your, let's say, in-law, or wife has with her in-law, your mother, for example. You must be true to the principle of being just in this. But it does not mean that you aggravate the situation by using harsh words or bad words. Be kind and equitable. I found, for example, just sometimes choosing the right times, giving gifts just makes love between people. You can, of course, in sulah, it's allowed for us to even bend the truth and lie, kind of like bend the truth. The Prophet says in Hadith, إِصْلَحُوا ذَاتَ الْبَيْنِ فَإِنَّ الْفَسَادَ ذَاتَ الْبَيْنِ هِيَ الْحَالِكَةِ. Make islah, rectify affairs between two people, because corruption between them is destruction. So one of the times we're allowed, to even exaggerate the truth is in making islah. So let's say, for example, a mother-in-law has a problem with her daughter-in-law, and you're in the middle. It's allowed for you to go to your mother and say, my wife really has so much love for you. I'm sure she does anyway. So to exaggerate, so much love, and she speaks about you all the time.
these kind of things. These things are allowed even from the point of view of making Islam in Islam, so it's permissible. So I think that you have the obligation, therefore, of being just, towards your parents, towards your wife, to try and make sure that both parties are happy. But when you know that Allah is, where there's an injustice by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where someone is being wronged, you have to side with the one who's being wronged. But you do it in a way that is not going to aggravate tensions with the other one. And the way to do it, I guess, is just to speak in a nice way, give gifts, be merciful, be understanding, you can use words like with empathy, I understand, it's difficult for you, I understand. This kind of shows that you understand. Allah was perfect. Anything else? Okay, inshallah we'll conclude here, inshallah. So next week, jazakallah.